So that was confusing. Almost as confusing as the direction to the target, would I be right? So today I'm talking about direction. This is more of a mental video. So direction in your shot comes from your mind and your body, but primarily your mind, and that transfers into your body. What I want to talk about specifically is how we get lost during our aiming phase. I personally find anyway. I have noticed as well with some other people, but I think this is more of a personal video because I deal with this almost daily. Basically, I'm looking at the target a lot of the time and I'm not thinking about the direction to the target, but I'm thinking about my aiming point. I would say 60% of the time, which isn't good. I'd say that's a large majority, 60%. I'd like it to be nothing. But I reckon in a day or two I could probably get it down to like 10%, because obviously I need to look at my aiming point, but I'll still lose my direction in shooting. One thing that I should point out before we start this video is that this will be different depending on what bow type a little bit, because depending on the way you hold the handle, or if you have a loose hold, if you're shooting a recurve, this helps a lot if you've got stabilizers, because it's how you hold it is how you force the direction. So just say if I had my target to the left of me, I'm obviously holding my arm out to the left of me. So if I've got my recurve bow out, that's basically just, it's kind of a push-pull motion, a lot of people say, and you're pushing. The pushing is the pushing of your arm to the target and then pulling of the bow back. That's a simple way of looking at it. But if we go more in depth, pulling our shoulder down and back into place, let's say that's a more complex way of saying it, just pretend. But we're also, with our head, we're thinking about the direction to the target. So we're obviously not crumping our hand like that and saying, oh, I really want to hit the target, because that's really not going to get you nowhere. But you don't think about that at the point in time. Obviously a lot of people start out like that, having a bent elbow, wrist, all sorts, a lot of wrists as well, tend to bend like that, and that's not really a direction to the target, and that's understandable because obviously you need to learn how to change your elbow position and learn how to move those muscles out of the way, because obviously if you have your elbow out like that, you're going to hit it. If you have good direction with your hand, you're going to be hitting your elbow if you don't know how to get it out of the way. So this is obviously comes natural in this position because you don't want to hit yourself. So this is like another beginner video, same level of working out, because you kind of want to work on both these things at the same time. But this is a lot more to do with a little bit more complex in terms of the mental game, because you won't realize at all that a lot of it's just mental. When you start out, you think about it only physically, but there's a lot more mental to it. Anyway, I'm going to shoot some arrows. Whoa. So this is no joke, just 10 meters. So today I'm still in the learning process of this draw, so I've moved back to a different bow. So hopefully I can represent what hand movement would look like. Obviously, like I said, this is where the discrepancy is, because if you're using a different bow type or you're learning a different discipline, it's going to be slightly different the way you hold the bow. Mostly your draw hand will be the same. So I'm going to take some shots, obviously with a lot of direction to the target. So you'll see this in, you should see this in my bow shoulder and a little bit in my draw shoulder as well. I would say less in my draw shoulder, more in my bow shoulder. So when you're thinking about the process of shooting, you're obviously thinking about, you want to hit the target, but you've got to transfer that from your mind into your body more. So when I see people without much direction, sometimes it can be from them leaning back, because a lot of this has to do with incorrect body position, not activating the right muscles. But like I said, everyone gets to that point, and everyone is at that point, and everyone gets past that point. So it's completely fine. So basically you would have to learn getting your elbow out the way, and then this is more of the grip of the bow. So as you can see, the tension comes from the muscles within my hand. So when I'm shooting this specific bow and this specific style, I'm putting tension in my fingers, my bottom fingers, and then also the webbing between my thumb and my pointer finger. So that's giving me direction, and it's tense on the bow, and I'm thinking about hitting the target. So I'm thinking about hitting the target and transferring it directly into those muscles. And as soon as you lose that, you're losing direction, and it's not really a good thing. You definitely notice this throughout your shot. And if I translated that into a recurve, So let's say you've got a loose hold on the bow, which I will shoot. Don't have a shoelace or a finger sling with me right now, so I can't represent what that would look like, but I can still loosely hold the bow, no problem. So what direction would look like in the bow in that sense is that you're not moving backwards, you're not leaning back, you're not leaning too far forward. In some cases, depending on what type of recurve you're shooting, you might be leaning forward slightly. But let's just say you're standing still, standing up, and your bow arm should just be outwards, come back in. So obviously you've settled your bow arm, but you're still thinking about the target, so you're still having a little bit of push from your shoulder of your bow arm to your arm. I know that sounds really complex, but you're still settling your shoulder in, but you're still having tension. So there's a difference between obviously resisting the force and trying to meet the force almost halfway while having everything settled. So obviously this is a hard thing to talk about because it's a lot of mental game, and it's really hard to represent what not having direction is in your shot, because trying to think about it, this is one of the things where it's hard to tell a person, oh, get your elbow out the way, because they're going to slap themselves anyway, and they can't twist their arm back into place. As you're going through, you just gotta, I think it's personal, like I said, this is more of a personal thing for me, but I think personally for each other individual, I think it's, you've got to actively think about, okay, where's my hand, like what's it actually doing? Is it just sitting there floppy? If so, is that good? Is that good for what I'm doing? Do I need a loose hold? Do I need to be putting pressure in the palm? Is my shoulder jerking up? My shoulder's up in the shot. That's having almost no direction, because you're resisting the force. You're not resisting it in a good way, but you're also not applying any pressure. If you have to apply pressure onto the bow, you have to actually push your shoulder outward. It's harder to have the control of the separation between your elbow and your hands, have them pushing, and then this also resisting. So if you have it back down, in through your back, you have that nice and settled, but then you also have that control of your elbow to your hands. So I can keep a lot more limp wrist, a little bit more easier with this as well. And it's like the extension where it can't come back, it's already at the maximum length I can get it with my back. But I think that's another thing I should talk about in another video, is about the bow hands. But just think about this in direction of terms of actively try and think what your hand's doing and what your elbow's doing. Do you want to hit the target or not? So, to give a quick representation of what it would like to look like if someone's really stiff and they have no direction. So I gotta say, that's an extreme example, but that does happen quite a lot. Big thing to take from that is that I'm gripping a lot with my hands. Some cases you shouldn't even grip. And then obviously the shoulder and the elbow. Elbow was a little bit out, shoulder, and then if you could see my draw arm, it's obviously just a static release. And then also sometimes you'll get the head movement, which is back into the shot, and sometimes they're out here. So that's what a really tense person would look like. Now, on the opposite hand, which is kind of related to me, this is why I say it's a little bit personal, having too much direction, but not having direction towards the target. You'll see in my shot, a lot of it comes from the bow hand. I do believe my draw shoulder and my draw hand aren't horrendous. I'm still practicing anyway with this draw, still working out little niches, and it feels a little bit weird coming from shooting sideways to shooting with a flat hand now again. But all that aside, I just want you to look at what I'm doing with my bow shoulder and bow hand, elbow, because you'll notice I over torque the bow, row the arrow. Now that's, like I said, that's on the opposite scale. It's not saying that you're really loose, it's just saying you're just really forcing it. So it's forcing it, and then it's not really doing anything as well. Those first three were pretty normal for me, but those last three were exaggerated deliberately. Let's go down there. So sorry, we're in the shadow at the moment, but this is all I got. So the first three were this one, and this one. Now I can get a grouping because I do this all the time. Now the second three, where this one down here, all the way down, I don't know if you can see with the shadow. So it's kind of in alignment, but obviously I think I was dropping the shot with my hand. Second to last one's this one up here, and then the last one's over here. You can see, you probably can't see on the camera, but this one's actually in on an angle more than these three as well. So that's obviously I've torqued the string and then thrown the arrow sideways a lot more than these three. But those last three were a great example of too much. Take that into account when you're shooting as well. Obviously, like I said, it depends on what bow type. So I'm shooting an Asiatic recurve. I'm practicing this type, which is a little bit of torque. But if you are shooting a recurve, most recurves you just have almost no hold on. So in some Asiatic recurves, they have a large arrow pass, which you're looking at right there. So that's the arrow pass. In some of those, you hold the bow a little bit further out from the grip. My bow will still be centered along the position in my hand, but the grip will be off center. Just say that's a centered grip. My hand will be placed slightly off center, a little bit more. It's barely noticeable, but if I try and center it with my hand, obviously the string's off to the right. So that's where the torque comes in. Now, if you're holding a recurve, obviously you would want to hold it down center. You've got your arm guard on. There's usually a shelf there, so it should be a lot more easier to shoot down center. And then your elbow should be out the way. That's when a little light hold should come in, but you still have the tension of going to the target. So I just want to reiterate again, a lot of this is personal for me, but definitely can be applied for everyone. And most of it is mental. I'm just trying to put it into a physical form. So when you're thinking about it, I should overstate thinking about it. That's when it will come into play. So there's definitely a physical aspect, but you got to be thinking about it first actively. Anyway, that's it for now.